Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Craft of the Draft for the 2025 season. I'm Mitch Keating, and joining me each and every week to cover all the latest on the AFL draft is draft analyst John T. Ralph Smith. John T, welcome for the very first episode of what is going to be an action-packed season ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. The first round of Talent League on the weekend, and there was plenty to unpack. Looking forward to getting stuck in.
It's a big episode to kick off our new series. On today's episode, we're going to be looking at the 13 top prospects off the back of the preseason. So some names who have obviously had massive bottom age campaigns heading into their draft years, some that have had big preseasons, and even some early starters that have shot out of the gates already, even though we're just at the end of March. On top of that, some early top fives as well. So we've had the SANFL under 18s, having a few rounds already under their belt. We're going to look at some of the surprise packets from the Coates Talent League, as well as some of the the bottom age and Overagers, as well as some of those outside bracket players that are always going to be of note in 2025. But as mentioned, let's get straight into what we are suggesting are the top 13 prospects heading into the new season. So a lot of these players have really built strong cases in 2024, whether it was at the national championships level or their local state league competitions and talent pathways. And it's a great mix, the 13 that we've kind of focused on for today's episode, given the types of positions that are on offer, probably moving away from that midfield heavy group that we might have seen at the end of 2024. And this is, certainly a group that can satisfy a number of clubs and a number of list needs, whether that's through key position talent, flank options, outside, inside, midfielders. And on top of that, club time talent is also littered through what we're predicting to be the top end of the draft at this point of the season. And coming in at number 13 is WA's own Fred Rodriguez, the top WA prospect that we've circled for the year ahead. Had a pretty solid national champs for WA in what was still a struggling carnival for them, but he was one that stood out among their bottom ages.
Yeah, he certainly was, and I think he really put his name on the map there, and what he's been able to do in under 18s footy has been really, really impressive. Is that sort of midfielder that's quite attacking, quite dynamic as well. I think people who have watched a fair bit of him say that he's someone who could push himself up a fair way on this draft board. He could get himself into that top 10, and yeah, he's certainly that consensus best player out of Western Australia in 2025 with his ability to rack up the footy and his energy and also sort of that ability to do it in short spaces of time when his team really needs a lift or they need something a little bit different. He's someone who's able to provide that in a space of time to shift the momentum. So hopefully we see that in a consistent period of time for him this year, because I think there's a lot to like about him, and yeah, the upside is quite high.
Moving into number 12 on our list, an agile midfielder out of South Australia, Sam Cumming, another player one player who we've gotten an early look at given the SANFL's early start, which will roll on in the second half of the show. But given his under 18s form last year and a nice finish in the under 17s Future Stars game on grand final day, really built his case as one of SA's top prospects for the year ahead.
Yeah, he did. I think something that really stands out about him is just how clean he is around the contest. He's been really, really clinical in the first 3 or 4 games for his SANFL under 18s club, which has been really good to see. He's a ball winner. But the other thing that I really like about him is he's got the ability to keep his hands free in the contest. He's someone that's very hard to pin holding the ball. He's always able to feed it out to teammates, and he's quite balanced as well. When he gets the ball on the outside, he's generally quite reliable by foot. So he's someone that doesn't necessarily have the flashiness of someone like Ezekiel, and who we'll speak about a little bit later, or the speed of a Dylan Patterson, or the kicking of a Josh Lindsay rather, but certainly has a really solid base to work off.
Yeah, one of my favourites certainly entering this year's is coming. I think he's, like you said, with Rodriguez, a player with high upside, very classy, and can roll down back if needed to as well, which is always something that will be the case for players in the AFL Academy and even sometimes at the national champs level, is finding that second position that can kind of catch the eye of scouts. So he's going to be one to watch. One player you mentioned just before, Josh Lindsay, and when we also mentioned the under 17 Futures Stars game on grand final day, he was one of 2 players to take out best of field honours, capping off a nice year with the Geelong Falcons.
Yeah, he did, and he's co-captain this year for the Geelong Falcons. And speaking to people around the Falcons, the word is that throughout preseason, something they've been really impressed with is the balance and professionalism he's sort of shown. He's always been that consummate professional, someone who's always looking to improve, but he's found that balance really well in this preseason, which is allowing him to take his footy to new heights. We know how good he is with his kicking. We saw it in that game that you referenced and throughout last year quite consistently, but he'll get some midfield time, which will allow him to show his lateral movement and what he's able to do at stoppage, which is probably the next step for his game. But yeah, he probably settles off half back, and when he is using it and getting that overlap run, that's when he's at his best. But yeah, if he's able to add that contest side to his game, it'll be pretty hard to stop. So I'm looking forward to seeing what 2025 has in store for Josh Lindsay.
Starting off our top 10 as we count down the top prospects for 2025 is our first club tied prospect in Gold Coast Academy prospect Dylan Patterson, a player you mentioned before, who's one of many that are tied to an AFL club and one of a fair few who are also tied to the Suns this season as they kind of weigh up their list strategy and acquiring some more academy talents for the year ahead. But Patterson looks like one who is lightning quick, versatile, deadly on the ball, and can really work hard off it as well.
Yeah, I think you've summed him up really well there. Yeah, that athletic profile is something that's going to hold him in really good stead. And it'll be interesting to see how the Gold Coast Academy do juggle their on ball mix when they do play the Coast Talent League games, given they do have Zeke Euland and Dylan Patterson, as we're talking about, and also Bo Adamsall as well. Kobe Colson will roll through there too. So his secondary position is probably a wing because he's got that high running capacity and he's also got that ball use. So I think he's someone who, if you're looking at players who are really exciting to watch and you want to go to a Coast Talent League game purely for an entertainment point of view, he's someone you'd go and watch. And yeah, he's shown in some really important games throughout his talent pathways career that he can stand up. Most notably, I think in the first half of that under 17s futures game and also in the trial game as well. So yeah, he's someone who I think is always able to stand up to the next level and he's shown that consistently. And it's just a matter of putting a consistent block of footy together because, yeah, he's certainly got all the tools.
Now, heading back down to Victoria at number 9, we have Ollie Greaves, Eastern Rangers midfielder, a player who looks a cut above when you see him in person compared to all the other teenagers he's running around with, given his size. But then once that ball's bounced, he is that ferocious animal that throws his weight around and uses it quite cleanly as well at the contest. What have you kind of seen from his last 12 months and what do you expect for his year ahead?
Yeah, I think he's someone that's just been underrated by people around the traps, particularly with the litany of other big-bodied mids that are in this draft class. I think he's someone whose ball use really sets him apart. He's been praised by the Eastern Rangers for the way he does use the ball and his decision making, his willingness to bring teammates into it, which you don't always see with players who are sort of top 5, top 10 prospects. They want to sort of put the team on their shoulders and do it all themselves. But we saw that in the early rounds of the Coates Talent League, round one, in the practice match that he played against the Northern Knights. He stood up for Eastern Rangers when they needed him late in that round one game. And he's obviously a bullet a gate in the contest as well. Really hard to stop, a good clearance winner. But I think he's got so many tools as a midfielder and also a big bodied midfielder that, yeah, you're someone you want in your team, particularly with his work rate and athleticism for a big body.
Yeah, I think a player that can certainly unlock that next level this year now that, he doesn't have Josh Smiley, Cody Anderson, Christian Moraes as that kind of leading three in midfield, and he'll kind of get the keys to the engine room for Eastern, which is very exciting to see. Next on the list, another highly touted player and one of key position quality is Louis Emmett out at Oakley Chargers. A player, again, with high upside and a number of players who can fit the bill as a key forward or as a ruckman and even as that fourth midfielder, if you will, given his ground level work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he does probably, if there's a next step in his game, it's probably just showing what he can do forward of the footy a little bit more. He was exposed and probably played his best footy in the ruck in 2024, but he's 199 centimetres, which is probably a little bit short for a starting AFL ruck. So I expect him to settle positionally long term as a forward who pinch hits in the ruck. And like you say, when he is in the ruck, that sort of agility and ability below his knees makes him really, really dangerous when the ball does hit the deck. Probably had a little bit of a quieter start to his year against Cooper Duff Tyler, so a baptism of fire for him against the Calder Cannons. But yeah, he's someone who's so athletic and is part of this modern breed of AFL tools that's able to get you in the air with his contested marking, but also the athleticism and skills when the ball's in general play sets him apart. So yeah, look for him to have a big impact for Oakley throughout 2025 and Vic Metro.
Coming in at number 7, a player who I think many would tout as potentially the number one
Yep.
overall pick if we were having a draft today, and certainly warrants that kind of conversation. Is
Yep.
Willem Dersma, the fourth
Yep.
of the Dersma family, coming out of Foster in the Gippsland region, and a player whose versatility is one of his big strengths, as is his ball winning, as is his ball use and his craft,
Mhm.
and a player whose upside could really surpass all others, given what we've been able to see over the last 2 to 3 years, really, for those that have been keen draft watchers.
Yeah, he is. I think the reason I put him in a little bit lower than, yeah, where a lot of people have him is just I haven't seen him necessarily in the midfield as much, and that ability to win a hard ball and that strength around the contest was something that I wanted to see a little bit more when I did the list last week. So he's going to get plenty of opportunities for Gippsland in there throughout the season, and his first opportunity, well, he certainly made the most of it and started to answer some of those critics on the weekend. Yeah, what he was able to do playing on Riley Onley at stoppage a lot, so someone who's much, much bigger than him. He was best afield by a fair way, and a lot of that came down to what he was doing at stoppage. He was winning the ball, he was at the bottom of packs, he was feeding it out to teammates, and he was getting on the move as well. Really, really hard to stop. And yeah, if there's any question over his contested footy, I think he's taken a positive step towards answering it. Certainly want to see more than just one game as a sample size. But yeah, you can certainly see why he's in that number one contendership, and he's got that athleticism and ball use, like you talked about, reads the game so early and has the basketball background, which shines through with the way he plays as well.
So yeah, certainly an even field for that top pick and plenty of action to come ahead. Another player from that game who comes in, number 6, Len Heatherton, a key forward who you're certainly a big fan of what you've seen over the past 12 months.
Yeah, I am. He kicked 3 goals on the weekend, and it wasn't a day for Murray at all, and I think that sort of speaks to the way he plays his footy. He just finds ways to pop up and kick goals. When it is his day, he kicks 5 or 6. We've seen that on multiple occasions, and when he isn't, he's still able to contribute with a couple as well because he takes the contested marks, and he was getting a lot of attention on the weekend and often will throughout the season, just given his status now as a top forward prospect, but was still able to pull down some marks or make defenders panic into giving him free kicks. And then when the ball hits the deck as well, he's got that speed and turn of foot that makes him really hard to stop. But the other part that's really impressive about him, and I think we saw it quite prominently on the weekend, was just how high up the ground he was getting to present an option long down the line, which was quite impressive. And he can pitch hit in the ruck as he showed on Sunday as well against the Gippsland Power.
Now let's head into our top 5, and the next 3 names are all club-tied talents, and we'll start with Dan Annable at number 5, linked to Brisbane as an academy prospect. A player who we're envisaging seeing even at the VFL level a few times for Brisbane this year, but whether it's with the Allies or the Lions Academy, he looks like a quite reliable midfielder who gets the job done when asked.
Yeah, and probably should, I guess, qualify that this is a power rankings and not a mock draft because we know that a lot of these academy talents do tend to slip a little bit and clubs aren't always held accountable. But yeah, Dan Annable, I think coming into the season with what he's been able to show at senior footy and under 18 pathway level has been really, really impressive. He's that real inside bull, but he's got that balance to his game where he's willing to put pressure on. And yeah, what he does when he doesn't win the footy at stoppage is better than anyone else in the draft class, I would argue pretty clearly. And his post stoppage spread and also his ball use and acceleration when the ball does get to the outside is quite impressive and isn't something you necessarily associate with the type of player or type of build that he is. Usually they're sort of tenacious ball hunters, but he's also got that outside balance which sets him apart. So yeah, a really big fan of his and looking forward to him leading the Brisbane Academy and Allies midfields this year.
Another player who he'll be working with and waxing with a fair bit this year will be Max King,
Yep.
member of Sydney's Academy, another midfield talent who can throw forward and really find a balance between those 2/3 of the ground. A player with great upside. What have you kind of liked in his game from what you've seen?
Yeah, I think it's that athleticism that really sets him apart. Size and athleticism equals gold, I think, for AFL clubs, and he's got both of those, and he's got them in spades. And if there's a third element to that, it's versatility. And like you say, you can play him in the midfield and you can play him up forward as well. He's really, really good above his head. He wins clearances. He's able to read it off the ruck's hands really well, and he's quite clean below his knees. Knows how to use his size, which isn't always as easy as it seems for some big-bodied midfielders. So I think that's another really important factor as well. And I expect that for him, it's just a matter of getting continuity and playing a full season, and then he'll put himself in that top 10, top 5 contendership. It's just he's probably been a little bit stymied with injuries and other things, which has held him back from being talked about as much as some of the other players in this category. But yeah, expect him to jump quite quickly if he does get a consistent block of games under his belt this year.
Now, I've mentioned the Dersma family already in this episode, and I think the Yulin family might be one to watch out for as well. Four brothers, obviously Bodie already at the Suns and a staple in Damien Hardwick's backline. And Zeke, a member of the All-Australian side last year, the under-18 All-Australian side, the only bottom major to do so in earning a selection. Another Suns Academy prospect as well, a player who certainly excites, but in a different way. He's not that, bona fide ball-winning inside midfielder or big key position player who has that tremendous upside. He's more of that flank outsider who can pretty much play on all three lines, which is a great threat for him. But his run, his kicking, and his ball smarts seem to be his leading traits.
Yeah, well summed up. His nous is really, really good. If he gets it sort of 60 to 80 meters out from goal, you think he's going to make the right decision and he's going to be able to put it on a platter for his forwards. So that's something that stands out. And he's got that power to burst away from stoppage as well. He's probably someone that you'd play as that extra at stoppage, as that high half forward, if he is to play at stoppage at the next level. But no doubt he'll get some midfield time to show his wares there throughout this season. I'm someone who's a really big fan of him. And I think I talked about it with Dylan Patterson, that if you want to watch someone just for entertainment, you'd go and watch Dylan. You'd probably go and watch Zeke Uland as well. So Gold Coast Academy might be a game to bookmark this year when they're on near you in the Coates Talent League.
Now down to our top two. And coming in at number two is probably South Australia's leading prospect, a talent that certainly made his name known at the under-16s level, and then as a bottom major last year for South Australia in a midfield that contained Sid Draper and the Camporelli brothers. Dyson Sharp was really able to show his strengths as that big contested ball winner inside for the Crow Eaters. And this year for Central District, he's already got his SANFL senior season underway in round one, and looks like he could really add a few extra strings to his bow this year with some of that senior opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him add those strings to his bow that you talk about, because we know at junior level, with the body that he does have, he's able to monster kids around him. And we know how good he is from a midfield craft point of view as well. But what he did on the weekend in round one, and we'll probably see a fair bit more from him at SANFL senior level, is him play that high half forward position, which is a position that you sort of have to adapt to. It's a little bit difficult. It can be specialised. And he did that quite well on the weekend. Only had the 10 disposals. But what he was able to do quite well was at the foot of sort of packs, when there were contests forming in terms of players going up for contested marks, he was able to stay at the fall of the ball. And I think there were 3 separate occasions where he was able to get himself shots on goal, which was really, really impressive. And then, yeah, his ability to, I guess, use the ball on the outside, but also feed it to teammates was quite clinical as well. So what he showed, and what he'll hopefully continue to show, is that he's able to do it against senior bodies. And it's not just a matter of his body maturing a little bit earlier and doing it against kids, but also that kicking and using it quite well and making those good decisions when he does have time and space, rather than leaning so heavily on his stoppage game, which I think he certainly started the season on the right note for a player in that pick one contendership.
Coming in at number one on Craft the Draft's top prospect list is Calder Cannons ruck forward hybrid Cooper Duff Titler, a player of tremendous upside, who had probably not the busiest of bottom age seasons, given he was weighing up basketball commitments, but having elected football, it's a big win for AFL and AFL scouts. And while he started his 2025 campaign on a pretty strong foot.
Well, he did, and it only took him 20 seconds to kick his first goal of the season, and it was a spectacular one at that as well, straight out of the centre stoppage, running forward, and kicked it from 50. But yeah, finished with the 26 disposals and I think 15 hit-outs as well, and that's the sort of player he is. He's able to grab it out of the ruck, and then he has more time and space than some other players. I think when I was doing the write-up about Cooper Duff Titler, I said that with the modern-day ruckman, you don't necessarily talk so much about the not wanting them to take on the 45 kicks and those sort of things, but Cooper Duff Titler takes it to the next level in that you actually want the ball in his hands, because he kicks it so well. He makes such good decisions, and when he is in space, he's got the ability to step around players who are 20, 25 centimeters smaller than him. So yeah, like I talked about before, when you've got size and you've got athleticism and skill set, and also the versatility to play forward and in the ruck as well, that bodes itself really well. I think Calder have talked about the fact that the next step for him is probably just showcasing what he can do playing as a deep forward first and foremost, because like Louis Emmett, he's that 199 centimetre mark, so he's probably not starting ruck at the next level. So we'd like to see him take those contested marks and kick some bags, playing as a deep forward if he is going to go pick one. But yeah, he's got the contested marking to lean on and he's got the skill set to lean on. So it's probably just a matter of exposure and consistency for him in the forward line for Calder. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how his year plays out. And like you say, it started off on the right note.
You can catch Craft the Draft's full breakdown of the top 13 prospects and some honorable mentions as well on zerohanger.com. We'll have plenty more rankings to come across the draft campaign. A few more listicles that we'll see out the show on are some top fives, just some early looks on what we've been able to see in 2025 and maybe some of the later form of 2024 that's going to excite some in the first few months of the season. So we've had the SANFL under-18s underway for 2 to 3 weeks now. That's given us a good glimpse of some of their talent, both 2025 and 2026 prospects, as well as some surprise packets out of the Coates Talent League, and then some of the bottom ages for 2026 and the overage players for potential mid-season draft chances. Let's start maybe with the SANFL, given we've had a few weeks under the belt already to look at some of the SA's best and some familiar names, which is going to be really exciting for a few clubs. But maybe we'll kick it off with Louis Callaway, obviously out of Sturt. Strong midfielder's had such a great start to the season, and he's tied to Richmond as well as a father-son selection.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's averaged around that 25 disposal mark, been really, really good for them. He's a tough inside midfielder. He's a really good ball winner as well, and he's got good skills. He's good on the spread. So I think he's someone to watch quite closely because his start to the season has been absolutely dynamic, and I think he's got the ability to really push himself up into calculations for Richmond, given he is a tied prospect. It would probably just be a matter of weighing up whether he's the type of midfielder they need. We know that they got Josh Smiley and Sam Lawler last year, so whether they think in the long term he can wax with them will be a question they'll weigh up because he is probably a midfielder in the long term. So, yeah, we'll watch out for him throughout 2025 because he's probably been the main storyline to come out of the SANFL in the first 3 weeks of the season. Mitch Marsh is another one that's worth bringing up, a spearhead from West Adelaide. He's kicked multiple goals in each of his games. That really powerful, tall player is able to take contested marks. So hopefully he can push for state honours and might be able to hopefully replicate this form at the national championships. Dougie Cochran, a top 2026 prospect, has had a really strong last fortnight as well. He's out of Central District, so potentially they'll have 2 number 1 picks in a row. Obviously a lot to play out there. Dyson Sharp and Dougie Cochran both out of a powerhouse in the SANFL though. And then Aiden Schubert and Josh Reichout as well, both from Central District too. Worth pointing out, Aiden Schubert, a tall forward who's been a good target long down the line and has been hard to stop in the opening rounds for his team. And Josh Reichout is that sort of balanced overlap defender. He gets the ball off the half back line and then distributes it really well up the field.
Let's have a look maybe at some Coates Talent League action and whether that's the form that we've seen immediately off the round 1 weekend or something that's been kind of murmuring over the preseason and summer weeks. Some of the surprising names, some of the players who you might have heard of here and there, but that weren't really getting the runs on the board that are now stepping up into their draft year campaigns. Who are some of the names that have surprised you early into 2025?
Yeah, so yeah, we'll go 5 again. So Adam Swade is the main one that's probably worth bringing up and a really, really worthwhile name to remember for Essendon supporters. Obviously, they got Isaac Kako via the Next Generation Academy last year, and there's been some talk in the last month or so about Hasina Al Ashkar, who did kick 4 goals in their opening round on Saturday against Oakley. But also strong was Adam Swade in the midfield. He's really, really aggressive with his ball movement and with his run and carry and with his willingness to drive his legs out of stoppage. So watch for him to hopefully have a good season. He missed all of last year with an ACL injury, but yeah, his practice match and round 1 performance both bode well for a strong season to come. So hopefully a Vic Metro troll for him. Jack Miller, a crafty forward from Tasmania, looked really, really dangerous in their first game of the season, kicked 3 goals, a really good marking target. So he'll push for Allies selection, but it's a really strong squad this year. So be a tough one to crack into. Avery Thomas, quite strong for Tassie as well. Good closing speed and a good marking, intercepting sort of defender. Tom Matthews set the tone for his team Gippsland power against the Murray Bushrangers, a live wire small forward, the captain, and has had a really strong pre-season. Really like what I've seen from him. He's quite strong, he's quick, he's clean below his knees, all the attributes that you want from a small forward. And similar things can be said about Seb Murphy, who's the co-captain of the Northern Knights alongside Tyson Gresham. He spent some time in the midfield and his toughness really stood out. I really liked what I saw from him. Probably a best on ground performance in round one against the Eastern Rangers. 25 disposals and the 7 tackles. Yeah, his ball winning and his pressure both elite.
Yeah, younger brother of Adelaide's Lockie Murphy is Seb. So one to watch for the Northern Knights for sure in 2025. Let's have a look at some of the 2026 prospects that caught the eye. And we already mentioned Dougie Crockin over in SA, but from a talent league point of view, there's another familiar surname in Cody Walker, the father-son prospect for Carlton through Andrew, and also a Richmond NGA prospect who had a fantastic under-16s carnival and looks set to have a pretty strong start for Bendigo as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Cody Walker. So I think the maturity of him through round one was quite impressive against the Tassie Devils, and a good story for Bendigo. They had a wretched run of losses to finish 2024, so good to see them on the winners' books. And yeah, Cody Walker played a big part in that. It wasn't just what he was able to do with the ball in hand, but sort of recognising game situation on a couple of different occasions was really, really impressive. He sees the game so early, and he's got silky skills in traffic. So he had a solid start to the season. There's more gears for him to reach, but still had the 23 disposals and was one of the more influential and classy players on a pretty scrappy day, skill set wise, against Tasmania. Jack Pickett opened his season really well, kicked 3 goals for the Geelong Falcons, and perhaps a surprising name in the Vic Country Summer Hub, given he hasn't had that exposure to Talent League footy. But yeah, a really competitive forward and someone who gets high up the ground, and he showed that against the Dandenong Stingrays. So a good start to his season. Melanie Oakley has had the 23 disposals and 2 goals. Similar vein to Tom Matthews, as I was talking about before. He's quick, he's clean, and he's got that strength above his head and at ground level as well. So good to see him starting the season well, because he's probably one of the most exciting players of the crop. And alongside him is Archie Butler, who played as a deep forward for Sandy. Another scrappy game, a little bit like that Bendigo versus Tassie game that I talked about. But he was able to kick a couple of goals. He was really elusive, hard to tackle, and yeah, his aerial work really set the game up in what turned into a bit of a slugfest. And then Lockie Hicks as well, playing for the Western Jets, his talent league debut, got the Vic Metro MVP at the under-16s national championships last year. And yeah, his stoppage work was quite strong for a bottom major on debut. So it's a game to build off for him. It wasn't necessarily a flashy sort of highlights reel worthy game, but yeah, certainly showed some signs that he is classy and showed that form that he did at the under-16s national championship in patches.
And obviously for the Talent League, a great avenue for overlooked draftees is being able to have that overage campaign and coming back as a 19-year-old. And it has turned out to be a decent breeding ground for mid-season draft options as well. A few number one picks coming through in recent years who have been the 19-year-old assets that we've seen in the Talent League early into this year, off the coming in to the new season, that might catch the eye.
Yeah, well, I think Zach Walker's the main name to talk about here, and a late addition to Gippsland's list. We did their preview a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about the fact they're usually a good breeding ground for mid-season draft prospects, and this year they didn't actually have one on their list. But yeah, he's come from local footy after missing their under-16 squad and is an intercept defender. So we know we've had players from Gippsland's under-16 squad who are intercept defenders who missed the 16 squad before go on and get drafted, namely Alex Taru. So yeah, a similar type of player as well, with his ability to intercept. He took 8 intercept marks on the weekend, 10 marks all up, 16 disposals, and anything that was coming in long and high. He read the cues really well and was able to, really assert himself behind the ball. It was a great performance from the Phillip Island local. So hopefully he's able to continue it, because certainly some positive upside for him there, and hopefully he's able to push for a young guns trial, because he's someone who's certainly in that vein of players that has some attributes that AFL clubs like to cling on to. Ollie DePoli-Cubank returned to Tasmania this year wanting to improve his contested work, and he showed that tenacity against Bendigo. So a good outing for him. Connor Evans was tough, and his rebound was really good for Bendigo in that game against Tassie. So that was good to see. Tom Evans, his namesake, no relation though, played in the back line for Bendigo. He played as a forward last year as a sort of of running half forward, energetic, but he was recast as a defender on the weekend and showed some really pleasing signs. His rebound and run and carry was quite strong, but his toughness was important as well for Bendigo. So good to see him get that first game under his belt. And Colin Ainsworth is a speedy player out of Murray whose courage and running both ways really stood out. He executed a couple of really good rundown tackles, but then he was able to break the lines off half back. So look for him to just catch some attention just with that raw athleticism and potentially get a couple of games in that Young Gun series.
Well, on next week's episode, we'll be going through all of our leading mid-season draft hopefuls. So that'll be certainly one to watch out for. And we'll also, from an AFL adjacent, I guess, avenue, looking at each club's top tied prospect for the year ahead as well. So some of the names that footy fans will want to keep an eye on. But that'll wrap up today's episode of Craft the Draft. Jonty, thanks again for jumping on and breaking all that down.
No worries. Thanks, Mitch.
You catch all our other episodes of Craft the Draft on our YouTube and podcast avenues, as well as further analysis on those platforms. You can also head to zerohanger.com for all the latest news, views, and opinions on the draft.